it's not a balanced budget we need, but a generation balance. At least that's what Professor Laurence Kotlikoff says from Boston University. He joins us from the campus camera there in Beantown. Larry, thanks for coming to Street Smart. Let me ask you about your most recent Bloomberg View column. It got a lot of reading from traders down here on the floor, stirred up a lot of discussion. Why don't you just clarify for us what you mean by a generational balance? How is that possible?
Well, we need to really think about what we really care about, what the real issue is here. The real issue is not balancing the budget, because nobody actually knows what the budget is. The budget is a measure. The deficit depends on how you label receipts and payments. If you call this receipt a tax, you get one deficit. If you call it a borrowing, you have another. It's really a word game. The real issue here is whether we're going to leave our kids and tomorrow's kids with enormous liabilities that are going to mean a lifetime tax rate that's far higher than the lifetime tax rate that we're paying. That's the issue of generational balance. And there's a limit as to what our kids can pay. So the entire debate about the debt ceiling is way off the mark. We really need to balance the generational balance, not the budget balance.
And just by the way, you know, we're hearing so much debate in Washington about, do we raise taxes? Tea Partiers sign a pledge. They're not even going to talk about it. But obviously, as you go into the future, there comes a point where we have absolutely no choice, right?
Yeah, you know, if you're talking about raising the retirement age for Medicare or for Social Security, you're in effect taxing the young. If you're talking about raising tax rates, that's also going to tax the young. So who's going to pay if we delay the implementation of these things? All the burden is going to land on our kids. Is that fair? Are they going to be able to handle it? How big is that burden? It turns out, when you really look at the long-term picture, what we're trying to lay on our kids is far beyond their means of doing so, of handling it.
So how would this generational balance work? I mean, you say in your column on Bloomberg View, each generation would pay the same share of its lifetime labor earnings and taxes, net of benefits received. That's very complicated. I'm already confused. How would we calculate this?
Well, it's pretty simple, Matt, actually. And all you have to do is take a look at somebody's 18, project all the taxes they're going to get over the rest of their life, subtract off all the transfer payments they'll receive, like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Take the difference, measured in present value, divide it by the present value of all the labor income they're going to earn. That's their lifetime tax rate. Now, if that gets to be 100%, they are totally screwed. And we've got a policy in place that's going to lead to that. And this budget deal that you've been talking about is going to lead to that, because it's far too little, far too late. $4 trillion over the next 10 years is way too little. We need about $20 trillion over the next 10 years to achieve generational balance. So we're getting into a deeper hole because we're balancing the wrong books.
And I mean, is there any optimism, or do you have any sense of hope that anything like this will be worked out in Washington?
No, I think I have just pessimism, because they're actually looking at the wrong numbers. They're asking the wrong question. They're balancing the wrong budget. We need to think about the generational balance, not the getting rid of the deficit. The deficit is peanuts. The official debt is $10 trillion. The fiscal gap facing the country, the difference between all the spending commitments and all the tax receipts measured in present value, is $211 trillion. The official debt's down here. The unofficial debt is up here. So, and that's actually as big as real a debt as the official debt, because are we going to default on the official debt before we default on Social Security recipients? I think we'll default on the official debt first.
Larry,
so
you know, it's interesting. Let me say, it's interesting because this conversation has really been gaining momentum. You know, I hear Alan Simpson, for example, from Simpson Bowles Committee, talking more about the old versus young when it comes to spending or benefits versus taxes. What do you think is going to have to happen before this really comes to the fore?
Well, I think a lot of people like you and me and Alan have got to be talking publicly and making sure that people 20, 30, 15 understand how totally screwed they're being by the current political system. What we've had is 6 decades of taking from young people, giving to old people, and telling the young people, don't worry, when you're old, we're going to take care of you. That's a Ponzi scheme. We've been running a Ponzi scheme and keeping these obligations off the books. We've been engaged in Enron accounting to the power of 100, as I describe it. So I think we need to let the young know that they're being expropriated, that this is fiscal child abuse, and they need to stand up for their rights.
Well, your column is one way that people can gain some insight into that. Larry, thanks so much for joining us. Professor Laurence Kotlikoff there from Boston University. You can check out his column on Bloomberg.com/view, a Bloomberg View column that's very interesting.